All right, in this video, we're going to dive into lesson 5, which is all about pulleys. And so we will hop in. As usual, we're going to start by turning off our streaming mode to blueprint, toggling off our level. It looks like my truck is still selected, but that's okay. We will open up our pulley level, make it current, and change it to always loaded. And so now we're getting into something that has caused issues in the past, so this will be a good video to follow top to bottom here to make sure that everything is working the way that it should. As usual, we can press the number pad 5 for level 5 to get to the viewport for this level, and then we can get into things. So if we hit play, we'll see what happens. Initially, we've got a ball rolling into a basket. When it hits the basket, the boot comes up. So our job should be to get our basket to, or our boot to hit the book. So that's going to be our first section here. So I want us to rotate. We're going to end up rotating this pulley, trying to get the boot to knock the book onto the book stack. That is our goal here. So the first thing that they tell us to do is grab our pulley and rotate it 90 degrees. Oops, that's my book. I should grab the pulley and rotate it 90 degrees on the z-axis. Make sure I did exactly what it said. Yep, -90 on the z. And then we'll see that we've got our basket in the wrong spot and our boot is not facing the right way. So we need to move this back into place. So I can drag it over, get it back about where that ball is going to be, get my camera view up so that I can see it a little bit better, get it there. And then we'll notice that our boot and our basket aren't low enough. So we need to get this boot underneath our book. So after we've rotated it, actually we can press the 9 key. They give us a nice little tool to see this top down. I'm going to go back to that 5 view. Once we get it aligned, now we need to, one, make sure they highlight that we should double check that our basket is not colliding with our box. So mine is. I'm going to drag it out 1 click so it's not colliding. And then we can do this again. We can hit play and see what happens. So again, ball gets to the basket, it lifts the boot, but it's not facing the right way. So we need to grab our diamond, and this diamond we can pull down to get our boot where we want it to be. And then in the details panel, we have a side 1 rotation, so we can rotate it 90. And then we have a side 2 rotation where we can drag it to 270 so that our boot is underneath our book. And again, we want to just double check, make sure our boot is somewhat in the right spot. Let's drag our whole pulley over 1 click so it's in between. And so that's how we can adjust our length of our pulley and the direction of our objects, so we have those details in our details panel. We can also adjust our movement speed so it moves twice as fast or half as fast. And so I'll hit play and we can see what happens here. Ball lands in the bucket, book lands on the book pile. So that's our first challenge. And so now that we've got that happening, we can move forward. So we can save our project file. Control-Shift-S saves all. And then we are going to look at starting to use our dominoes. And so that's all we had for this first level here. So I'm going to change my streaming method back to blueprint, toggle my visibility, open up my pulley challenge, make it current, set it to always loaded. And now we have this going on. We've got a ball that is going to, if we hit play, hit a line of dominoes, and our goal is to get our dominoes into the bucket. So we need to do a few things here. We can use a pulley in the middle of our screen to knock over the book, and then we need to extend our dominoes that are in our level here. And so let's start with our pulley and getting that set up. Let's go to our content drawer if we go to our blueprints and then our tools, we can find our blueprint pulley and start getting it in position. So I'm going to rotate it, get it in position, and you guys can do this at your own pace, and we'll come back together once it's all set up. Alright, so I've got my pulley set up where my boot is hitting the book. You probably did it slightly different than me, and that's okay. But my book comes down, and most of the time it was hitting and knocking over those elements. So let me actually drag it a little bit sideways. So now we need to extend our dominoes. They're not quite long enough. And so if we zoom in here on our dominoes, there's this little white line on our dominoes that we can click on and select. And if I change that to local space and drag out, I start to get more dominoes on that white line. If you're not seeing it, it's because you're still in your G hotkey. So if you hit G again, they'll pop back up. And then, assuming that all is good and we've dragged out our dominoes far enough, we should be able to hit play and see our dominoes land in the bucket, knock over the book, hopefully, and then get a domino into the bucket. And so once you've done that, you can move on. We'll move to the next point. So our engine activity is called Model for the Runway. We are going to use our modeling tool. So now we're going to look at the engine activity where we're going to get into our modeling mode. So we should be able to get out of our pulley by toggling the visibility and changing it from our streaming mode back to blueprint, and we'll be back into our kitchen environment. So we're going to go to our mesh or our modeling mode under our selection mode in the top left. And the first thing that they tell us to do is we're going to create a cylinder. So under the Create tab, we can create a cylinder. Mine's already set with the right dimensions, but we want to set our radius to 5 and our height to 75. And with that, we can hit Accept. And so when we hit Accept, it's going to create a new folder under the Maps folder. Under Generated, you'll have your name, and you'll see that you'll have some things inside of there. Mostly just this cylinder. And so with that, we can go and we'll create a sphere, and they want us to put the sphere on top of the cylinder, and we want our sphere to be a 20 radius. So that's what it says in our documentation. And so now that we have that in place, we can again hit Accept, and they want us to now add 2 different materials to it. So if we go to our content drawer, go to our materials drawer, into our plastics drawer, we have a bunch of options here for the colors that we want to use. And so I'm going to put a beige plastic on my stick and maybe this bright red plastic on the lollipop top so that I have a fun lollipop starting to come together. And so once we have the 2 materials onto our meshes, we can head to the X Form tab in our modeling mode, select both the top and bottom of our mesh, and we can merge them together. And so what this merge is going to do, this is different from what it says inside of our options here. We double check that it doesn't say those same steps here, but before I tell us the wrong thing, yeah, we're going to do just the X-form merge. And so we can rename our object, call it lollipop. We're going to write it to a new object, and we're going to keep it from input and then delete the inputs. And so we can hit accept. And now we've got a new mesh that is one single object. And the last thing before we leave here that we want to do is we want to change our pivot. So we can head back into our Xform tab, and there's an edit pivot option, or we can drag this down to the bottom of our lollipop and hit accept. And now we have our pivot point and our origin at the base of our object. So now with that all accepted, we have a lollipop in our folder. We can head to our content drawer, into the maps folder, into the generated folder, into your name, and then double click on your lollipop that you just created. So we'll notice mine's slightly off, but that's okay. It's not going to matter too much. And we're going to do a few things in here. We're going to add collision to it. So inside of this menu, we can go to the collision box, and we're going to use this auto convex collision. We don't need to touch any of the settings here. We're just going to hit apply. And now we should see our object starting to get some collision here. And it looks like some of that collision is inside of the sphere, but that's okay. It gets the point. So we're going to be happy with how that showed up. So we can save this and head back to our kitchen. And then with that, we should be able to go back to our selection mode, rotate our lollipop slightly, make sure that simulate physics is toggled on in our details panel. And when we hit play, oops, mine is on the wrong level. So let's make sure that we make our kitchen environment or our persistent level our current level at any given point. So I've got to delete my lollipop, drag a new one in, rotate it, and then when we hit play, we should see it fall down. But I didn't enable physics. Simulate physics. Okay. Make sure that I drag it up slightly so it's not clipping the table. And then as we hit play, it should hit the ground, roll around a little bit, and there we go. That is our section here for the engine activity. So that leads us to our extension activities. So what you're going to look at doing, can you string multiple pulleys together to achieve the same goal? Can you manipulate a line of dominoes and create an image? And can you create a few different assets, things, objects to add to your level? And so try to create a few additional objects for your scene, put them in the background of your kitchen, and we can leave them there for all future screenshots. So that's a good place to end.